while we're here, we're roaming the streets of Graz dressed as cyber swamp escapees. And we want to talk to people about how, what's their experience of real life, and also to reflect on our experience of real life, or how we're being really pulled away from it by technology and overproductivity, and how sometimes connectivity makes us feel really disconnected.
Yeah, I think we are interested in the idea of the embodied feminist server idea. You know, you threw out this challenge to all of us. What could be a feminist server? So we decided to get together, and we got a house given, sort of lent to us by a lake, and we spent a whole week together talking about these things. And I have a lot of nice notes here, actually, because we were really thinking about the idea of service, of feminism. How could a feminist server do something different than ordinary internet servers do? We were thinking about the fact that we're all so anxious in America. This may not be true here in Graz, and in fact, this is one of the things we've been finding out very interestingly, how driven and how anxious we all are to constantly be online, to be answering all of our email, to be looking at Facebook, to be on Facebook, to be just on all the time. And the kind of exhaustion and sort of anxiety and even panic and health problems. So one of the things we're thinking that a feminist server should do is really thinking about how we're actually living, this in real life, and how we can slow down, and how we can be with other people without this intermediary kind of compulsion of the machine.
subRosa is always thinking about how the female body is connected to technology. And of course, with wireless, it's connected in different ways. And with in vitro fertilization, it's connected in yet even more ways. But they're all different. Biotechnology is also technology. And they're all connected to the female body in different ways. So one thing that we feel really impacted by right now is this model of management called lean production, which comes from factory production, but it's a way of conceptualizing an organization to be maximally productive.
And efficient, right?
Yeah, you make it as always constantly productive as possible, and you look for the weak links. So it makes a very productive, profitable organization or university or whatever, but then the organisms or people that make up that are not well and are really stressed out, and it's very hard to find a space outside of that to truly connect or question. So we wish to reinvigorate or hack the idea of coffee and cakes.
Yeah, this idea also came from another project that we did for the Pittsburgh Biennial a couple years ago, in which we thought about a short essay by Virginia Woolf, which was about Second World War, thoughts about peace in an air raid, it's called. And in it, she introduces the idea of tea table thinking, of the way in which people have a face-to-face sociality in which they can talk about major problems and issues in a really different way than you talk in a war council or in a war conference table.
Boardrooms and classrooms
and business rooms. And, so she's really kind of talking about to me, anyway, I kind of translate it into also the longtime feminist idea and slogan that the personal is political and that the political is personal, and how we live and how we work together is part of actually what we do, and so is part of the meaning of what we do, and that the feminist server is really also about how we create connection, community, collaboration, solidarity, all these things that are very hard to do, I think, online without, if there's never a face-to-face, if there's never an actual embodied meeting like we're having now, it's so different to be going through the city, in our costumes, talking to people in this embodied way rather than having them click into something on the internet.
Entonces, ¿cómo? What? Yes? Yes, I'm fine. Was soll das sein? Das muss. Das können Sie nur anfassen. Also wir sind Feministinnen. Wissen Sie, was Feministinnen sind? Ich denke schon. Ja, Menschen. Was? Menschen. Nein, Feministin. Ja, hat irgendwas mit Frauen zu tun. Okay. Bin so schnell. Also das ist für Frauen als totale Menschen, ja? Und die können genauso viel machen wie Männer und vielleicht noch mehr. Zum Beispiel.
Public space and public dialogue have been criminalized, especially in the U.S., not only with post 9/11 rules about civic engagement and free speech, but the militarization of our police, which is like at new levels never seen before. A lot of recycled equipment from our endless wars is coming home to local police departments and being deployed to Black communities, and also any gathering of people who's basically protesting war or capitalism. So it's not just hard to have conversations on the internet, it's also hard to have them in person. Drifting in the streets wearing a ridiculous outfit that has embedded...
I think it's beautiful.
It's beautiful and ridiculous, but we have lots of like stuff and the little objects all over, people recognize them and they cause conversation, and we can just come up and engage in a conversation with something that normally, well, in the US that might be criminalized in some sense, but it maybe creates an opening for conversation with someone who might shirk you otherwise.
Well, it's interesting, Reni, because you told us, and we've seen all over the city, these little signs that say absolutely no posting of any political or artwork in this space. It says it in German. And you told us that there's been all these rules here in Graz about how many people are considered a crowd, how many people shouldn't sit on stairs together at monuments.
Who's allowed to sit and who's allowed to stand.
Yeah, and that kind of repression and suppression of conviviality, of people coming together, of bodies coming together. It's in a way it's safer to do it online because it's not embodied, right? It's not in the real world.
But that's an illusion, of course, that it's safer to do it online.
But in a way, this is also what hackers are doing, of course, and they are causing huge amounts of trouble, right? That does have effects in real space. And in actual life, certainly in their lives, because they get imprisoned for many years, often in America anyway. You can be put away almost for life for certain kinds of hacking. If you're hacking the Pentagon or you're hacking, so hacking is actually kind of almost a scary word now because it's so punishable now. And a lot of the hackers are being actually hired by the FBI and by the CIA and by the government to hack other countries, to hack groups, to hack, other races. And so, this idea of hacking, the ministry of hacking, in a feminist way, kind of gives us a real challenge to think about what we're doing when we're hacking in a feminist way. It can be an intervention. It can be like a glitch where you change the code in various ways. We can change gender codes, we can change language, we can change the ways people think about women who work with technologies, those kinds of things. We can think about the ways, we can intervene in the ways that people interact with each other online.
Or in person.
Or in person, yeah.
Today we were going around with artificial cell phones and people were staring at us in our outfit, and so it was fun to sort of stare back with this gesture, which is like immediately understood. So that's a sort of, I think of that as a sort of hack of a gesture, or
yeah. Also thinking, I was thinking also about the situationists' idea of détournement, where they're basically taking the meaning of something and twisting it, or taking something from public and pop culture and putting a completely different text to it. That's also a kind of hacking, I think, as it begins to really make completely new associations and new meanings. Which can also be done in collage, for example. John Hartfield, in a way, did a very interesting kind of hack, before the internet had been invented.
Yeah, I guess I do think of hacking as having things in common with remixing, because you're working with like a sort of existing structure or encoded something, whether it's like a physical object or a language, and then you're breaking it apart and recombining it for a specific purpose, which could be to make a new tool or to shed light on information or yeah.
Could be a reappropriation too, which is another technique of hacking, I think, this kind of appropriating, like the yes men do, for example. They hack in many different ways, I think. And, some very famous hacks that they've done, where they're actually mirroring websites and giving out news to the world, as though they were from, corporations, representative corporations and so on. So all of those kinds of politics, kind of really brings that kind of politics into the internet that can actually have real effects in real life.
Hacking is in some ways turned into kind of almost like a lifestyle aesthetic thing, or like the term life hacking, which we're critiquing as part of our project, isn't really about hacking in the feminist sense. It's life hacking is a neologism that's ways that people apply that lean production to their own personal lives so they can be more efficient and more productive and more competitive in the workplace. That's not the kind of hacking that we're interested in, but it's using the similar, it uses the words life and hacking, and it doesn't mean the same thing when you put it together. So you always have to be on guard for how movement for justice and for feminism can be like snatched back into the jaws.
Co-opted, yeah. I mean, it goes in both directions, right? And this kind of appropriation by companies of all of one's data that turns, that takes our data body and uses it to commodify us, and to constantly be trying to sell us things, and uses our data to for their research and how to make us even more commodified and make us into customers, and as though they knew who we were. Where you get a message on your email saying like, "Hi Faith, you are interested in such and such a thing, so why don't you look into this and that? We know what you like, we know what you want," which is really this kind of intrusion into, there is no more. Our data bodies are so vulnerable to constant exploitation and constant marketing, and
Then there's a whole other level of that happening by the state. Like there's a program called Total Information Awareness. And that's just sort of gathering everything, which of course is impossible, but gathering as much as you can in case you need it to retroactively persecute people for thought crimes and other. So total information awareness is not the same as like paying attention or being aware or communicating. Because ministry is also a religious thing, and this is a very religious, patriarchal religious.
But not just religious, also in terms of ministering to people's needs, you know, again, going to service and serving. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, but that's in a kind of Christian way, though.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's not just done by Christians. It's done by, you know, all cultures have hospitality and service and, you know, ideas about
but sometimes with
hosting
different ideas about why and how you do that and what's in it for you. So we're always looking at the many, many different ways the female body is, in particular, is incorporated.
It is surveilled constantly.
It's surveilled, and it's like the raw material. The woman is the producer, the consumer, the reproducer. So we looked at it that way. I was just thinking, though, about how, because our costumes have a lot of green in them and like recycled materials, some people have been looking at it as a foremost an environmental statement, which I think is interesting in a with total information awareness and all the surveillance and also the need for repetitive data backups. It's a huge environmental problem because there's these like server farms they take up land, they take up water, they take up power, and they're kind of invisible. Sometimes they're right under our noses, but they take enormous resources that we don't really see or comprehend, and they're secured, so that makes it even harder to see them.
Hacking is about that, right? You said it's opening up the process, you know, and you know, turning things around, changing things in that way, which is, you know, I mean, the anonymous group, for example, they often do this hacking in terms of, look, we're in here, Pentagon, hello, we're here. We're just saying, you know, take notice because we can get in anywhere we want, you know. So kind of, you know, going into the cracks of, you know, in between, you know, not hiding in holes, but kind of, you know, being insurgents in a certain way, you know, into the culture and into the systems. Cyberfeminists have, for a long time now, you know, really tried to open up these forbidden kind of power places, you know, kind of really putting some sand into the machine and saying, you know, so.
Well, this space could represent that in many ways. I mean, it's not.
I think so.
So.
Seid Sand, nicht Öl.